every morning with drive. Being on the grind, know I had to survive. We had to win. Started from the dirt and the rubble. I had to be the needle that was popping your bubble.
Hello and welcome into the Rookie Prospect Profile Series. This is a Zilla Fantasy Elite production. Today we're going to be looking at wide receiver Tahj Washington within the rookie wide receiver machine learning models. Can Tahj Washington go from late round draft pick into fantasy stardom? Our cutting edge machine learning models hold the answers. Stay tuned to find out. Tahj Washington was drafted pick number 241 overall in the 7th round by the Miami Dolphins. Played college football for Memphis and then USC. Comes in at 5'10", 174 pounds. So a small guy here. Hand size only 8 3/8 inch hands. So that's pretty rough on that end, but 33% college dominator rating, 26.8% college target share is pretty solid. 19.3 breakout age is halfway decent. It's got some short arms at 29 1/8 inch arms. So how's this guy going to perform? Let's go take a peek at year one and see what we see. And you can see here, surprisingly perhaps for a late round draft pick, 25th and 24th best mean and median at 3.88 and 3.86 respectively. Maximum output at 7.52 is the 33rd best in the class. And the CV at 28.3 is telling us it's fairly confident in this particular person's predictions. Let's go take a peek at historical context. Who is hitting around 3.7 to 4 fantasy points per game during their rookie season? And here's a list of players in that range. JJ Arcega-Whiteside, Jalen Marshall, Cameron Meredith, Nelson Aguilar, Marquez Callaway, Quez Watkins, Dez Fitzpatrick, Michael Clark, Keelan Doss, and Brandon Powell. Pretty uninspiring list of players there. Let's take a peek at that max output around 7.5. What do we have in that particular range? Got players like Demario Douglas, Traquan Smith, Michael Pittman, Trey Quinn, Ace Sanders, Devontae Adams, Marquise Lee, and Paul Turner, all in between about 7.2 and 7.7 fantasy points per game during their rookie season. So got some interesting names there, at least in the maximum output. Let's head into year two, see if we see any improvement on his end. He's got some interesting college stats, so I'm assuming we'll see a little bump up here for him. And sure enough, we do. We see him get all the way above 6 fantasy points per game for his mean and median output. 18th ranked in the class, which isn't too bad. Maximum output at 12.12 is the 22nd ranked in the class. Mild profile of a high floor, low ceiling. Maybe not as extreme as some others, but it seems like that might be the case with this particular profile. 26.9% CV is the 15th best in the class. So it does like him a good bit in terms of its confidence in these particular outcomes for Tahj Washington. So let's look at historical context. Last 11 draft classes, which wide receivers were hitting 6 fantasy points per game? These are the list of wide receivers that hit in between 5.8 and 6.2 fantasy points per game during their second season in the NFL. Chester Rogers, Terrace Marshall, Sammy Coates, Devin Funchess, Ben Skoranek, Jalen Guyton, Justin Watson, Chris Conley, Stedman Bailey, Dorial Green-Beckham. Despite the solid output there, that's a list of players that you're probably not going to want on your roster, unfortunately. 12.12, let's go look at the maximum range. Who's in this particular range of people? This would be in the last 11 draft classes inside the top 50 year 2 outputs. So Kenny Stills at 11.6, Keenan Allen at 12.5, all these players in between. Jamison Crowder, Henry Ruggs, George Pickens, and Chosen Robbie Anderson. Those are all the players in between 11.6 and 12.5 fantasy points per game during their second season. Obviously some better names there, but this is a maximum output. Tahj Washington perhaps can be used in some capacity by Miami in this particular offense, but probably not going to be leaned on to get that maximum output. Let's go look at year 3, see what we have for Tahj Washington. And we see a step back here into the 4 to 4.5 points per game range for the mean and median here. 26th ranked outputs there, and the mean and median, which are some of the worst for this particular year 3 profile, is minimum at 20, maximum at 16. Not too bad there. So 4 to 4.5 fantasy points per game. Let's look at the historical context. Who is in that range during their third season? We have Freddie Martino, Kadarius Toney, Nick Williams, Josh Reynolds, Jason Moore, Paul Richardson, Desmond Patton, Aaron Dobson, and Stedman Bailey, all in between 4 and 4.5 fantasy points per game. Again, these medium outputs aren't very good for him. And actually, if you look at the graphs on the bottom, his highest bucket in terms of predictions is coming in between that 25th to medium percentile outcomes, which are some of his worst ranked ones. So in between like 3 to 4.5 fantasy points per game is where it's expecting him in year 3. Let's look at that maximum output. 14.93 is really good. You'd be super happy with that. Whatever his profile is, it does see a pretty decent ceiling for him in year 3. Hovering in that particular range in between 14.3 and 15.3, this would be in historical context inside the top 25 of the last 11 draft classes. We have Jarvis Landry, DK Metcalf, Will Fuller, Hunter Renfrow, and Devontae Adams, all in that particular 14.3 to 15.3 fantasy point per game range. Not too bad there. Let's look at year 4. What's it looking like for Tahj Washington? And unfortunately, we see a pretty big step back. Even in the maximum output here and the minimum output, they're all basically in between rank 30 and 32 across the board here. Mean and median at 30th overall. Hovering just below 4 fantasy points per game at 3.9 and 3.82 respectively. Let's go take a peek at historical context there, which 4th-year wide receivers in the last 11 draft classes were just below 4 fantasy points per game there. These are the receivers in between 3.51 and 4 fantasy points per game. We have N'Keal Harry, Michael Campanaro, Khalif Raymond, Ashton Dulin, Quez Watkins, and Bryce Butler. Again, these median and mean outcomes not particularly great for Tahj Washington. Maximum output at 9.47 would still be a disappointment. Who is hovering in that particular range? We have Chad Henson, Paul Richardson, Gabe Davis, Alan Lazard, and Kelvin Benjamin, all between 9.32 and 9.7 fantasy points per game. So not a very inspiring list of people there. Lazard and Gabe Davis, some level of fantasy success, but not people that are winning you your leagues. And that's if he reaches his maximum output in year 4. All right, that's going to do it for today's rookie prospect profile on Tahj Washington. This is presented by Zilla Fantasy Elite. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.